Hi YouTubers! This week saw a statement of not a fit person to run a major international organisation for Rupert Murdoch by an investigative body called the Leveson Inquiry as a result of phone hacking by journalists or those employed for the purpose in its name. This scandal has bored the socks off most UK residents, whose main concern is that those in power find this shocking when everyone else seems to know it went on anyway. Had they never heard about the old Charles and Diana phone tappings that resulted in transcripts of every phone call to their respective lovers during their marriage? Years ago perhaps, but why would people assume that it no longer happened? It seems that telling the public that sources close to the unfortunate and mostly celebrity victim did not mean that their families and friends were selling them out for cash after all, and the nasty press were gathering information on their phones following their totally normal private lives, then making them look bad with the type of affairs that most others do anyway, but would prefer not to tell as they may hurt close friends and relatives in the process. This non-resident octogenarian is accused of allowing his media empire, News International, to conduct gross invasions of personal privacy, guilty of huge failings of corporate governance, and whose instinct has been to cover up rather than seek out wrongdoings and discipline the perpetrators. They went on to say that Murdoch turned a blind eye and exhibited willful blindness and willful ignorance to the crimes being committed. So, in Britain at least, Murdoch has become a nasty name, and politicians are separating themselves rapidly from any association that they may have had, even though the rest of the country knows that to be in power you needed his mind-twisting garbage spreader to survive, just as a dung beetle needs dung. So why am I mentioning this? If you cast your mind back to 2010, Britain promoted and invited, at the taxpayers' expense, a cavalcade of political and royal patrons to revere and give thanks to one who was hailed as one of the great moral leaders of our time. Another non-resident octogenarian, none other than Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later of course known as Pope Benedict himself. A man whose global cover-up of child abuse certainly permeated from the top. Was he not guilty of huge failings of corporate governance? As a prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, did he not commit willful ignorance to the crimes being committed? Did he not cover up rather than seek out wrongdoing and discipline the perpetrators? Perhaps the crimes he committed are not comparative. After all, we know that a footballer sleeping with another's wife will cause him great embarrassment, possibly even lead him to a public divorce that we can all hear about in a follow-up edition. Even worse, it might be a publicly uninteresting tale of a Parliament minister and his totally legal walk in a well-known London park that's also a haunt for gay men. Such stories have become as much a tradition as a full English breakfast, and to find out that someone tapped a phone and used it to make a story less deniable, it's frankly not really the type of crime that warrants the day after day drudgery on every bit of media and paper for months. I'm not saying it should not be addressed, but let's compare the crimes of the Vatican. On the minor side, you could say that a few slightly fiddly priests are not going to create a lasting damage to all the children they encounter, with lifelong psychological damage or constant nightmares. Yet the scale of the reported abuse goes so much further, with rape, buggery, prevalent in all the accusations, often from children placed in care of the church, with these men as guardians in a place of trust. It's recently come to light that Dutch clergy in the 1950s surgically castrated boys who accused them of abuse, with at least 9 incidents of testicle removal of boys in their care, which was regarded and performed at the time as a treatment for homosexuality. Has the British government called for the Pope to address a committee set up to cover the child abuse in the hands of the Catholic priests? In Northern Ireland, which to those who live far from the British Isles is not really in Ireland. It's actually part of the UK, because most of its population preferring the Protestant version of an invisible God over the Catholic one. However, only this week we find new allegations of a serial paedophile priest that was reported to church authorities in 1975, with names and addresses of those abused, yet allowed to continue abusing children for over a decade without the church authorities contacting the police. Are not the victims of these priests being abused again, by being denied the justice or government inquiries at the very least? Should the Pope be branded publicly as not a fit person to run a major international organisation? Is the British government not being a lousy bunch of hypocrites in playing down serious criminal acts and almost worshipping the Pope? Is religion itself being given special status once again, at the expense of law and justice? As always, I ask you to make your own mind up. Peace.